but he's on his way.
Baltimore?
Yeah, but I think his flight, no, I don't know that he's coming to Baltimore. I don't know the answer.
Okay, I think we'll go ahead and, whoops. We'll start talking. She'll find her way back to the table. Mr. Trotta, Dr. Michael, Mr. Rollins, I think you're going to lead the discussion here. We have some properties that at this point may become surplus, or we need to have the discussion about how we would like to see them used. Information only. Again, this is a work session. No official decision will be made.
Morning again, board members, Dr. Wilcox. I want to take this opportunity to look at three pieces of property. We're not prepared to make a recommendation specifically on any one of the three pieces of property as what the board might want to do with the property, but we do think it's the time to talk about these three properties. We're going to talk about what's referred to by staff as the old JDC property. We have some aerial views of that, a little bit of the size of the building, some of the challenges we have with the building, those types of things, as well as Conacajig and Winter Street. A little over, a year and a half from now, students will be finishing up the use of those two buildings in their current condition. And we want the board to start thinking about what might be some options for those facilities. And we'll go through some of those options. The simplest thing, obviously, is just to hold on to property, but there is a cost to holding on to property. And that's some of what we want to be considering. Do we want to be involved in that cost? Is there an opportunity to repurpose it for something else? Do we want to mothball the building, want to demo the building, keep the property? Do we want to hand it off to somebody else and let that headache be theirs? Just lots of options with all three of these properties. What I've asked Rob to do is really just to walk down through the three properties, give you a little overview of their current, where they're located, current condition, that type of thing. And then Tony's got a little summary of what happens with property. We really don't have a lot of rights other than once you determine to give up the property, the rights really become directed by some other folks. But certainly I think you'd have an opportunity for recommendations or considerations and all that. So no recommendations today, just want to review the three properties and get you thinking particularly about we need to start planning for cost or cost avoidance or long-term how we want to handle the facilities from our side of the house. Thank you. Rob?
Okay, well, I'll start out looking at Conacajig Elementary School. This school was built in 1960. It's one of our oldest schools, going on its 55th year. It's the second lowest ranked building in our facilities assessment that we do each year. 27,000 square foot. It's about 1.5 rounds. It has 10 classrooms, so it's sort of an odd size too. You can't even get a full complement of 1 or 2 rounds into that school. We have 4 portables out there. Sitting on a 13-acre site, it's not served by public utilities, no water or sewer out there. Current SRC is about 249 students. The cost to replace the school, we did a report when we went to close both Winter Street and Conacajig. We estimated it about $16.3 million to build a full 2-round school and bring public utilities out to the site. So it's an expensive proposition to replace on site if we wanted to keep it. It's also a semi-open school, so the classrooms you have to walk through one classroom to get to another one. In the school, as many were built in that time frame, were like that. So those are the basic facts on that site. The Winter Street Elementary School is our lowest ranked facility on our facilities assessment. It's going on its 62nd year. It was built in 1953. It's 33,000 square foot. It's a full 2-round school. Oh, okay, sorry. I like leaving the picture up there. It's also the smallest site we have on the, other than our downtown school, at 3.1 acres, nestled between two of the busiest roads we have in the city of Hagerstown with the east and westbound Route 40 on Franklin and Washington streets. We estimated that it would take about $14.2 million to replace this school back when we did the school closing report. And again, it does have semi-open classrooms also. JDC is out in the Smithsburg area on Federal Lookout Road. It was built in 1971. It's currently unoccupied. It's in a fairly dilapidated condition. We've been using it as storage, 16,000 square foot. Um, some of the HVAC components have been removed or are not operable, so the building can't even be conditioned in its current state. The 9 acres that it sits on are on a real steep slope. If you look at the photo, everything above the driveway really slopes steeply downhill from there, so it's a tough site, even though you have the acreage to actually use. And also, if you notice, the silver circle on the to the right of the picture is a town of Smithsburg water reservoir, and it has they have an easement going across the property with a water line that serves the town. So those are the basic facts of the 3 sites. And I don't know if you were going to go through the. Yeah. Sorry.
So again, as we start to just think about options, we're not prepared to make any recommendations, but we do have options of, we could land bank 1, 2, or all 3 of these sites. Some considerations would be particularly for, well, any one of the sites, do you demolish the building so that you avoid trying to maintain the envelope of the building, meaning, keep a solid roof on it and windows and doors, those types of things, securing it or whatever. Mothballing the building, you could, board up the building, try to secure it that way, minimum heat, minimum cooling. Certainly other options of how we might land bank it. Considerations would be the ongoing costs of holding on to the property. Even if we demoed the building or mothballed the building, we obviously have ongoing ground upkeep, fencing, whatever that might still remain at the site if the buildings were removed at any one of the 3 sites. You could surplus the property, at which point you could return it to the county. Options and things we've heard rumors from folks, is it possible to make Winter Street a downtown park? Is it possible I know we actually had some folks look at Conakajig for a private school, and they obviously would absorb all the challenges that might come with that. If we did surplus any one of the 3 properties or all 3 properties, there would be the potential of some cost avoidance depending upon how we're maintaining the property for land banking it, and those resources could be used in other places in the school system. So at this point, we'd like to turn it over to Tony just to review, I believe, a brief document that's also in your packet of what would happen if you chose to excise any of the pieces of property, and then we'd be glad to answer any questions you might have. Tony?
Thank you. Good morning. Maryland law governs the process that needs to be followed whenever a Board of Education determines that a school property is no longer needed for school purposes. The first would be that the board comes to that determination that it's no longer needed. It would, at a public business meeting, adopt a motion declaring the property as surplus, that it's no longer needed for school purposes. The next step would be to notify the county commissioners of that particular action, and also to notify the state superintendent of schools of the motion that was adopted by the Board of Education. We would next move to step 2 in the process, and that really is under the consideration of the county commissioners. They have 30 days after they're given notice of the action taken by the Board of Education as to whether they would want the property that has been declared surplus. A new amendment to the law is that during that 30-day period, if there's a charter school that is interested in the property, that they can express that interest, that they would like the surplus property. The next step would be that if the property is deeded back to the county commissioners, they must notify, and we must notify the Interagency on School Construction, which has the final approval as to whether they're going to allow the property to be transferred. What the Interagency on School Construction is looking at is whether there's any outstanding bond money that's been dedicated to the property. And they don't really ever deny that the transfer take place, but they will place conditions. That is, they will send a letter to the local government saying, we'll authorize this transfer, but you must pay this amount of money in order for us to approve the transfer. And what it is the bonds that have been issued for that particular property are amortized over a time period. So if there's any residual that might be due that has not been fully depreciated, the local government then must make up that difference to the state of Maryland. So that is the process that applies to surplus property. I'm glad to respond to any questions.
Jackie?
I don't exactly have a question. I did try to make contact, well, I had made contact with Willie Eby from Mount Tabor Builders, who also is on the board for Hewitt's Mennonite School several years ago, and you all are aware that they took a look at Conacajig. I tried to contact him yesterday. He didn't call me back, but I did find out that they do have blueprints to build a school, but they have no land. So I'm not sure if they're still maybe interested in that site. I'm sure they said they would rather stay in the general area. So that's a possibility. Of those three buildings, the one that looks like it might have some value for us would be Winter Street, I would think. It's possibly a boutique school or,
Possibly. The land size obviously is one challenge. If, as a boutique school might be of interest, as an elementary school, we'd always have that ongoing operating cost because it's such a, it's a two and a half round type school. We looked at if it was to be remodeled, you know, do we demo the site? Do we try to go up 2 stories to try to compact the footprint of the building a little bit to try to, you know, provide a place to park because parking there is certainly a premium. Playground space is limited, that type of thing. But you know, there is potential. There's always a way to manage things.
Is there the possibility that that could be looked at in terms of pre-K space?
Could be. Again, our recommendation would be, you know, to invest in, you know, complete remodel of the building or probably cheaper or as cheap to demo the building and then try to address some of the
What
other.
kind of costs would we be looking at in terms of demolition costs? And I would guess they would vary because the size of,
Just to demo the building,
right,
not remodel the building.
demo.
I know that at Pangborn, I think our cost there was a couple $100,000. A lot's going to depend on asbestos and lead and abatement issues of those types of things. I don't know if we have an estimate on that, Mark.
No, but the school does have a great deal of those hazardous materials.
Probably in the $300,000 to $400,000 range.
And that would be for any of the 3 buildings to do that, or?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe less for JDC.
Maybe.
I was wondering about the Job Development Center. Mentioned that it's dilapidated and it was built in 1971. When did we vacate that and how did it come to the point where it was dilapidated when it's not as old as many of the schools that we have?
Moved out of there, we found the year. When was it? 2004. Moved out of there in 2004 when JDC combined with Marshall Street. Our numbers dwindled significantly, both at Marshall Street and JDC, as more children were included in their home school. So that facility was abandoned. The cost to maintain and continue to put, you know, heating units and things like that when it's not being used, resources were needed elsewhere. We have kept the building sealed up the best we can, but when you don't provide heat and cooling, you know, conditions start to deteriorate inside the building. The building is basically a block building. It was fairly, I won't say cheaply built, but I mean, it was built not like many of our schools. So it's basically just a block building. Much of it's open. Some of the surrounding area of it's partitioned off into some classrooms. Actually, today we have asbestos removal. You know, it's not going on because of the snow. It'll go on tomorrow. We have the entrance where we come into the school. The floor started to crack and is just kind of fragmented, and that is asbestos in nature, and we wanted to get that cleaned up.
So when we vacated it, we had no plans to do anything with it?
When it was vacated, discussion just like this occurred. You know, not sure what to do, not sure whether to keep it. Will it someday be a pre-K? The time Smithburg was growing rapidly, is there going to be a need for that to be some type of pre-K, K1, more K and 1 discussion than pre-K at that time? And just no decision was ever made on the property. And that's why today we're here talking about all 3 properties. Is there any interest in making a decision on any of them as we move forward?
It has been used as storage, hasn't it?
Been used
in
as
more
storage
recent years?
and like overflow for some of the additional pieces that we have for some of the new schools. We're really working at this point to empty all storage there. With the opening of this facility, we had, some legal records kept there, purchasing records kept there, kind of some overflow things. We're trying to pull all that out of the building and bring it back into this building. As something was purchased for a school, somebody would go ask to have a desk picked up or student desk picked up or chairs picked up, and they looked too good to throw away. So we weren't sure what to do with them, so we'd take them to JDC. And a lot of things have been redeployed and reused in other schools, but a lot of times, part of my thought process is if it wasn't good enough for someone to keep and use, then it's probably junk. And if it's not junk, we should continue to use it. We've spent a lot of time and man hours moving items there, moving them elsewhere, discarding them. And, part of the charge here I have with Mark is we need to end that practice. Bring furniture or excess items. If we have too many chairs or too many desks that are in great shape, we want to keep those and store those so they can be redeployed. We're going to try to do that within the building out back. And that way that inventory is right here fresh for people to see. Matt or Rick have a need for chairs, go downstairs, look at what we have. Is that going to meet the need? And we'll redeploy it that way. But we have to stop moving furniture back and forth and eventually throwing it away.
Does that include the storage at Cascade? Are we moving that out?
Cascade is next on our list to clean up. We just have some miscellaneous pieces of things there at Cascade and just, things we just haven't thrown away. TV carts, some things like that. You're in perfectly good shape. They probably were $300 when we bought them at the time, but there's really no use for them at this point. And the value to them on Gov Deals is, $2. We probably get $5 for scrap for them.
Have an auction. That might be.
We could, but then we lose 10 or 20% to the auctioneer, and we still get $2 and $3. And we experienced that at Pangborn when we try to sell filing cabinets and things like that. They sold, filing cabinets in reasonably good shape for $1 a piece and things like that.
Back, and then we wouldn't.
Yeah, and if they're still serviceable, my suggestion would be as much as possible, continue to use them until it's time to discard them. We don't want anybody using anything that's junk or certainly dangerous or completely unsightly or whatever.
Thank you.
I just have as a comment.
Ridenour or Dr. Hardings?
I think if we do have I would encourage staff to think about if we really are going to have a use for any of these pieces of property. And if not, I think as we try to build communities, maybe we think about the other uses that those pieces of property could be used for in the community. I think there are probably opportunities downtown. I know my kids took karate at a community center in Keedysville that used to be a school that's used virtually every day for a senior center and for all kinds of other community activities. While it is our obligation to look out for what the needs are of Washington County Public Schools, I think we're all dealing with money and resources that ultimately belong to the community. And I think if there are ways that these pieces of property can be better used by the community than sitting and not really serving a function right now, I would encourage us to think about that. So that's all I've got.
Very much what I was going to say. I take some of the headaches off of us and allows the communities to make decisions as to how they would best be served by those properties. Looking at, and Jackie mentioned Conicajig. Conicajig has so many issues. It's not the building itself. It is in the, for example, septic. On a septic system that is nearing the end of its effective life. We have a water system that is a non-water system. We still have to bring water in for our students. It's not a particularly good site. The nearest public sewer and public water is over a mile away, and it's, that's the shortest route. The best route would probably be closer to 2 miles, I think. So, I mean, it has issues. It has serious issues, and I think that's one of the reasons Mr. Eby isn't as interested as he might have been, 6-8 months ago when he first approached. Winter Street, I think, absolutely is something that the city and county should make a determination as to how it's going to best serve that community. And when it comes to JDC, that is just a hideous sight. My opinion. Very little value with the slope, the access, among other things. So if I were making a recommendation, I would, I would talk about making it surplus, return it to the county if they're going to take it, and allow them to make a determination, how can this best serve the rest of the community? I don't see it helping us anytime in the near future, and I really don't see it helping us tremendously in the distant future, just based on the type of properties they are.
Thank you. I would like just a couple questions on the JD Center. As we're looking at that photo, the slope, does the 9, almost 10 acres include that slope? Does that property belong to us? That is probably absolutely some of the best land for a vineyard in Washington County. I didn't say winemaking, I said agriculture vineyard. That is Smithsburg has some of the best land in the state for vineyard. So I do think, and we all know that I'm strange and we've all agreed to that, but what about thinking about an educational agricultural and center, science center? What about a vineyard there where students are being taught vineyard management and the pruning? And I just think there's a huge opportunity there. Winter Street, I've always felt, and maybe it's not our place to move this conversation forward, but to me that could be a Wi-Fi hotspot for the community. It could be job development for the adults. It could be Girls Inc. It could be, to me there's a lot of synergy possible on Winter Street. I'm not sure demoing the building would accomplish that. I think the building could be a structurally sound. Would you agree that the building is structurally sound?
Yes.
Yes, I think structurally sound, but a lot of issues.
So again, that is in such I think, an important part of the Hagerstown community that it could be a community center of I think, some real affection. I think there's a lot of emotion tied up in that old school. And anyway, I just think there's opportunity there. Back to Conakajig, on my understanding and speaking to the county back when we were talking about closing this school, is that development down in that lower southwest corner on this photo, they have water there, don't they? They're not on wells. They have water.
Water was brought up closer when they put the addition on that Baptist church. I don't think sewer was brought up closer, but water was.
I, for some reason, thought either water or sewer was already piped or in the short-term plan to pipe back to that development. So I think so. And
We're not aware of anything. When we
So-
did the study, the county said
so
the
the
water was
idea
at
was
Hewitt's
it
Crossroads.
could, if they do bring pipes to that development, that would be something we could tap into. So, and I don't know that answer. Yeah, I don't know what the property alignment. So, I'm really not sure where this conversation needs to go. I don't know if, I think at this point, Dr. Wilcox, I would see some opportunity for the facilities department to make a recommendation and then bring it back to us. Based on some of this conversation, I'm not sure if there is real consensus here. But I do think we need to move this item forward, make a decision, and move on one way or the other. So, Mr. Trott, on the land banking, does the MSDE consider land banking? Can we do that within the surplus policy or state law, just hold on to land, whether the building's there or not?
Under COMAR, we are required to provide them with notice whenever we land bank.
In all of these schools, there's no bonding out on any of them. They're all free and clear at this point.
We do not believe so. Given the age of the schools and the times when improvements were made, I do not
Would
believe
be
there's any residual bonds that would have to be reconciled.
Any other comments from my colleagues? We'll bring this back forward after staff's been able to make some recommendations. Thank you. 10:30 is our closed session.
Write down, Mark.